Welcome to Conversations from the Edge of Consciousness. I'm your host, Kristine Madera. For me, and possibly for you, the inner world of consciousness has always been much more real and way more fun than the so-called real material world. Growing up, I thought I was alone in this, but I'm not. There are a lot of us, and far too many have no one to talk to who shares this experience. I've been lucky to cultivate a community of friends who love to talk about the energies, ideas, and vibrations that are pushing the edges of our own consciousness, as well as our collective consciousness. In Conversations from the Edge, we share our conversations with you. Welcome to Conversations from the Edge. This is your host, Kristine Madera. We are back with Amy Dempster, and Amy is an earth healing expert, and she shares her spiritual journey on her blog, Following Hawks. And she uses this actually as a resource for other people who want to learn how to communicate with nature and share their own unique healing gifts with the earth. She also teaches people in her Earth Tenders Academy, which is an immersive online journey that helps you to reconnect with your ancient ancestors, learn to communicate with the seen and the unseen forces in the environment, and to really offer your healing energies in places in need. Amy is also the host of the podcast, The Earth Keepers, which is really fascinating, and I highly recommend checking it out. But Amy, thank you for coming back. It's wonderful to talk with you again.
Thanks for having me back on, Kristine. I'm looking forward to our chat.
Is there anything that you want to add to what I said?
You know, I realize how much my work has branched out from, when you can start doing work with the land, but you can't help but get into all of these multi-dimensional places and conversations in order to understand what the spirits on the other side of the veil are trying to communicate and show you.
Yes. And there's, when you say dimension, there are so many different, not only dimensions like we think of them 3D, 4D, 5D, but other aspects of dimensionality as well. And we're going to talk about one of those today, kind of the virtual world and the projection from what we consider ordinary reality into the virtual world of the internet, and that it really is its own world, it's its own dimension, and we relate to it in interesting ways. And it's kind of a template for other aspects of understanding projected reality that we hopefully will touch on as we move forward. So can you share how you had this aha about the internet being this projected universe?
Yeah, I mean, it's the perfect example of doing work with the land and how then having to, kind of expand my understanding and reality a little bit. Yeah, I was led to do some very deep work with a large body of water that is here not far from my home. And when I first tuned in and was asking, why am I being asked to come here? What is it that's needed? I was shown that there was this huge black box that had these kind of tentacle like arms coming out that were anchored into the land, and the land didn't want it there. And so I was kind of led through over a period of weeks working through with this device to remove it. And so at some point, I was asking some deeper questions about kind of what is this and where did it come from and what exactly is it doing? How is it affecting the energy here? And I was shown that it was like a projector, and it was showing a picture of what this area looked like to all of us who were interacting with it. But it was in many ways like putting a cardboard cutout up, and it was completely disconnecting us from being able to connect with the energy of the place. It was in between. And so that was the first time I had seen something like that, like a machine that was creating projections. And I, of course, immediately thought, well, certainly this isn't the only one in existence. And started kind of asking more questions and thinking more through it, and really just started receiving additional information and being shown in other places where projections are perceived reality in some cases. And so it really was, as I was thinking about this being like an AI, an artificial intelligence machine, it just dawned on me that all of the internet is, is a projection and is a machine in some ways, and in some ways isn't a machine, right? It's just we're using machines to access it, but it's a projection as well. And so that takes you down all kinds of other rabbit holes once once you start putting all those pieces.
Because it's like a collective projection that we can interact with. And, at times when the internet goes down, I wander around aimlessly, not knowing what to do because, so much of my life is
what is there to do?
This interaction. But it's
Right.
a projected thing where we have our own kind of avatars in there, on Facebook, on Instagram, on these things that are projections of us on there, whether we're, really active with those or not. It's kind of how we represent ourselves in that sphere. So on your website, your YouTube channel, all of that kind of stuff. And, we think about it in terms of I'm interacting with this internet, and the internet brings me the information I want, all this kind of stuff. But really, it's its own projected universe, for lack of a better term, that we all collectively share, hold, and participate in. And to me, it's fascinating because with the way that my mind works is I've been pondering the whole idea of our bodies and our world as a projected experience of something larger, that we're sort of these projected avatars having this enclosed in this projected experience of this other energy. You can call it a soul, you can call it your infinite self, you can call it whatever it is, or like the fragment of that, having this projected experience. So we are this larger energy, but unlike, and it kind of relates to us, that when we log on to the internet and we operate through our avatar on Facebook or through our avatar on Instagram or something, that that's what's representing us. But what is the avatar like? What is their experience? And for us as projected beings having a projected experience, what is it that we're connected to that's projecting through us, and that we're having the experience of the projection of being the created being, of being the interface, as opposed to being the one that's doing the projecting. And so I've been dancing down that road for a little while. So when I heard you talk about the internet as kind of this projection, it was like, whoa, like had me totally fascinated, because I think that our experience is more of a projected experience than what we have ever conceived it to be.
Well, it's so true. And it's I love where you're thinking on this. But if you think about a fragment of a soul having to inhabit a human body, it
Mm-hmm.
really is almost like you're the energy shape shifting into being a human,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Into this body. But yeah, the body isn't you, and yet the purpose of being here on earth is to be embodied. And
Mm-hmm.
so, how do we reconcile that? And I think, what's really interesting, and I've been playing with this a little bit more lately as well, is because we are just vibrating balls of energy, and not
Mm-hmm.
nearly as solid as we have been led to believe, is that how many things can we actually change about our physical body, just simply by either having different beliefs about it or having different relationships, and it's hard to say, but I mean, you've heard stories of people saying, well, I fixed my eyesight by just,
Mm-hmm.
believing that my eyesight was good again, or, all of these different types of things. And so we so identify with the reflection we see in the mirror, or
Mm-hmm.
looking down and seeing seeing our hand as a solid thing, that it's difficult really for our brain to see it in a different way. But yeah, definitely the internet is such a great example, like you say, of it's just an avatar, and you can change the avatar if you want to, and people do it all the time.
Well, and the way I've kind of come to conceptualize this, as I've been exploring it, is really, it's where our attention is. And so, our as projected beings, and I'm just going to call us avatars or projected beings because, why not? Our attention, like, we learn that our attention is on the physical body and the physical world. And then, because we're physical, all of our feedback systems tell us that we're physical. So we kind of come to believe on a very fundamental level that we have a physical body and that the physical experience is quote unquote real, even though we are 99.999% space. And so then as we grow, we have this kind of conceptual world. So, when we have this on in the internet as well. So we've got all the ideas and the beliefs and the thought forms and the thought streams and all of these things that we learn to operate within. So we learn to identify ourselves within them. We learn to identify other people. We learn who is us and who is them, and how to navigate through these as we grow older, and how to navigate through these with life. But fundamentally, we believe that this conceptual reality is real, even though we change our ideas all the time within conceptual reality. So within this projected universe of our conceptual world, we individually change our ideas, our beliefs, our thoughts, all these kind of things all the time. But fundamentally, because the feedback system has shown us that this conceptual world is real, that the foundation of the conceptual world being real is real, even though it's even less real than the body. Like, a concept has no mass, and body has 99.9999% space, and a concept is all space. So that might be manifested into some kind of form, like the concept of justice can be manifested into jails and courts and police and all of these things. So it's got these
Right.
representations in physical reality, but in and of itself, the concept underneath it is completely made up.
Yeah,
It's different
totally.
from place to place. But we believe
Right.
it's real because our whole feedback system is telling us it's real. But there's another level that we're not taught to pay attention to, but you're tapped into it in your way, and I'm tapped into it in my way, and different people are tapped into it in different ways. And it's that subtle body, it's the subtle energy, it's the energy flow and the information flow that informs the projection, that's always, shifting and changing and flowing and connected to everything else. And so how you can talk to the land and how you can do this deep work is through this subtle energy that flows within the form. So within the physical form, and that this conceptual world is really kind of this artificial interface between the subtle expression and the physical world. So it gives us a playground in which to play. But then we've got this
Yeah.
subtleness to us, and through that subtle body, we're connected to everything. I'm going down my own rabbit hole. Sorry. And then what
No.
informs the whole subtle field, like the web or the field, is consciousness itself, which is always exploring and expanding and expressing through the subtle energies, through the forms, through all of these things rising and falling, through the concepts and all of this kinds of stuff. And like that, like when I think about a projected universe, like I think through the layers of consciousness projecting the energetic fields, like the field, the web of all information, and then that projecting into something that's more specified, like the earth energy, and then something that's more specified, like a human being within that earth energy, within these larger things, and then within that earth energy, or within the human energy, the projection of form and the human experiencing itself as its own self, that's actually like this multiple level of projection, and then in experiencing itself in this projected world, interacting with other projected beings. I mean, I am down my own rabbit hole. Sorry.
No, I am following you. I'm enjoying every minute of it. Yes, and then all those other human beings are reflecting back to you, what it is you believe. But I think you're right. Like step one is realizing that your consciousness is not you,
No.
or the you that you identify with. And so, I've had some experiences lately where I realize I'm telling my brain to do something or not to do
Mm-hmm.
something, where I'm saying,
Mm-hmm.
stop it, brain. What are you doing right now? And in a
Yes.
way that I really hadn't done before. And all of a sudden I
Mm-hmm.
realized, wow, I really am interacting with myself, in a
Yeah.
different way. And see my brain running away with something that is just not my intention at all. And not, I have to say, stop it. Like that's not me in that way. But I think a really easy way to grasp even that part of it that most of us have experienced is what happens while we dream at night.
Mm-hmm.
And really realizing that you leave the body behind and your consciousness goes on, right? Your consciousness doesn't need to sleep for 8 hours, your body
Mm-mm.
does. And so it's your consciousness who says, great, I've got, a handful of hours to go do something else. And in that experience, you start realizing, oh, I'm living other lives. I'm in other places. I'm in school at
Yeah.
university. I'm helping other people. That's your conscious. It's continuing on. It doesn't need the body. The body's here, for this, as you say, more of the playground for consciousness to expand. Right? We get this opportunity to be here and play and interact and create. But yeah, it's because it is more of a projection or loosely put together pieces of energy. It's much more flexible than we realize.
Yeah, it really is. And the analogy of the dream, I was playing with this, and it struck me that, in the whole idea of projection with this, that when you are dreaming at night and you project into the dream, like you're experiencing the dream, it's not all of you. It's this little tiny part of you that's happening. It's got all of your attention is captured on this dream, similarly that all of our attention is captured in our human experience, even though there's a lot of other experience happening under the surface in the subtle body and the subtle worlds and all of these things. But the other thing happening in the dream is that you don't just project into the dream as the avatar in the dream, like as you in the dream, you create the entire dream. And so you as the
Right.
projector are are
Completely.
both are both the avatar in the dream and the dream itself, everything reflecting back. And I was like, holy Moses, like that was such a leap for me to think, oh my gosh, so if I'm projecting into this body, then then everything I'm looking at is my own projection looking back at me. And the
Yeah.
power, and not power in a bad way, but just like the empowerment of really sitting with that and thinking, okay, so I'm not like I'm in this body navigating these, realms of this game that we're in, like a simulated reality game, or however you want to talk about a projected world like I'm everything. I am the
Right.
me, and I'm everything that I'm experiencing as the container of me as well, and then interacting with other people and beings doing the same thing, all kind of interacting with them. But it began to help me really feel connected to my larger self, to realize, in my theory of this projected world, that like I am all of it. And I knew it from like intellectually, I'd heard those arguments before and I'd heard these ideas about it before, and it just never landed. And then one night I was working with the dream analogy, and I thought, oh, like I'm everything. Like that's just
Right.
blowing my mind, still blows my mind. And whether it's true, like, and I talk like in this book I'm writing, where I'm exploring these kinds of things. I talk about this a lot, that, reality is what it is, regardless of what we believe it to be. And so, whipping ourselves up with new and exciting ideas about what's possible doesn't mean that we're actually grasping onto a actual truth, but that we're really kind of opening up the ideas and the possibilities that what we have been led to believe is true is not, that we are much more beyond that. So we don't have to kind of say, oh my gosh, this is now true, and I catch myself with this is true, and try to funnel yourself through that new truth, because that just, then you're just back in the same old game with the new truth, right? It's just a new shiny object to play with. But it's really to kind
Yes.
of like sit in that wonder and curiosity and say, wow, what does this unlock in me? What possibilities does this awaken in me if I consider that this may actually be a larger experience of reality than what I have been led to believe? So it's not a destination. Like, I'm not trying to put out any kind of new truth destination. It's more like, wow, how do I set myself free to see everything in a new way and to experience life as something completely different?
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is one of the hardest pieces for us to grasp when we start thinking of ourselves as multidimensional,
Hmm.
is the idea that it's all true, it's all useful in some way
Hmm.
or another. Everybody, you know, everything, everybody, everything is playing their part. And you're right, created by yourself to have these own
Hmm.
experiences. And, you know, I think it's it can be very difficult pill to start swallowing when you start looking around yourself and looking at your situation, or looking at people that maybe you don't like what they're doing or you don't like their behavior, and realize that they're there for a purpose too. You needed them to trigger you in this way, or to show you something you wouldn't have seen in another way. And so it's really fascinating when you can just say, either what if nothing is true, and what if everything is true? What if every single thing is true, and I don't need, you know, because you're right, true and false, or right and wrong, is
Hmm.
still being in duality.
Yeah, it's all
And
made up anyway.
so yeah. And we've decided.
Yeah.
So, you know, what might be true today isn't what was true 100 years ago. And so we just changed our minds. And so to me, there's a lot of freedom in that thinking.
Hmm.
But it does require you to be flexible about reality. And I will say I get stuck in my own lines of thinking exactly like this, where I'll just say, well, this is how something is. I've experienced it, and I believe that that's what it is. But I could change my mind, or someone could
Yeah.
show me something different, and then it changes completely. So what is true? How do you know? How do you know what's going to, you know, happen next? How do we know, you know, whether or not the whole projection is even a projection?
Right. And I
It's
and I have
easy to just keep going.
and I have no idea, but I mean, it's very freeing for me to think like that. And for me, what I've been working with for quite some time is to let go of the living in conclusion, like I'm trying to let go of beliefs altogether. You know, we all
Right.
say, "Oh, if my beliefs, the beliefs are your reality," and it's true, and it's your deep beliefs, construct your reality. What you believe, is generally limiting. So any
Right.
belief, though, ultimately becomes like a lens through which you require reality to show up for you. So to me,
Right.
beliefs in and of themselves are inherently limiting. And so since I was a kid, really, I've been on this pursuit of how do I live free from the constraint of beliefs, ideas, thoughts, all these things. And for a long time, it was like I would find this new one that completely shattered the paradigm that I was in before. Like back when
Right.
they thought the earth was flat and the center
Right.
of the universe. And then boom, all of a sudden Galileo says, no, this is not true. And then other people, of course, before and after said that. But once it was accepted, it changed everything. And you think, differently. Well, now the world is round, but it's in the middle of the solar system and is disconnected from all of these other things. And we're finding all these things that are true and empowering in the moment and completely change our perspective in the moment, that don't end up being in and of themselves true. And so I've really tried to let go of any attachment. I do play with my own sense of reality a lot. I have some free time, but
But here's my question to you then. Is not having a belief a belief?
well, no, because
This is
I
where I
what
get stuck.
I'm not believing that beliefs are bad or wrong or anything like that. What I do is I recognize when I come across a belief that I have, like, oh, okay,
Ah, yes.
this is a construction that I have, that I am forcing reality as it is, because it is what it is. Regardless of what I believe, my beliefs force it to show up in a particular way. But if I remove that
Yes.
lens,
Yes.
I'm able to deal with reality as it is in a more direct way. So that's what I've been trying to do. So when I'm playing around with these ideas, I'm not saying, oh my gosh, I found the new red pill, blue pill, I forget which one it is, that we're supposed to swallow to be
Right.
free, to be, into this new matrix where all of these other things are true. It's more like,
Right.
for me, it's always been how do you let go of your idea of what reality is in order to experience what reality is from the perspective of reality? Like, how do you engage what is without bringing your baggage to the table? And so that's kind of led me down this road. And so I personally, for me, really try not to do the whole belief thing, because I think it's self-limiting. But I also, and I recognize this is not an easy, it took me a long time to be able to do this and not having, panic attacks, because
Yeah.
when you let go of your ideas and your thoughts and your beliefs about who you are, about what life is, about what reality is, it can feel very unmoored. And there's a way that we operate in this conceptual world, and in the internet world, and these projected experiences. They all have their own kind of internal circuitry and technology about how they work. The brain works in a particular way. It's got a lot of technology embedded in it. I kind of moved myself into thinking of things in the simulated reality, because it makes it a little bit less like daunting and a little less personal. But if you think about it in terms of
Right.
technology, that we operate from the brain and the body in a particular way of technology and interaction that involve thoughts and beliefs and all of these different things, that
Mhm.
when we begin to live from that subtle realm, and you do a really good job in the subtle realm, but if you were to bring more of yourself in that subtle realm, and let go of some of the technologies of this constructive world and operate from the technologies of the subtle world, which is a whole different level of technology, and the rules are different. And then
Yeah.
reality shows up in a completely kind of different way. So my whole life has been about trying to set myself free from my own limitations. And sometimes I do go down some kind of crazy places to do it.
Well, I just like to call it taking my brain for a walk.
Yeah.
Let's see what
Yeah.
happens when I go down this line of thinking. But what's interesting is, and these are the kinds of things I do to myself, is that, so I have a belief, let's say, around the energy work that I do, where I will sometimes encounter an earthbound spirit, right? So
Hmm.
a spirit who has passed away, but hasn't crossed all the way over. And then I help them cross over. And so
Hmm.
I have created certain beliefs around what happens when we die, what the experience is, whatnot, based on these interactions that I've had that feel very true and real to me. So
Hmm.
maybe a month ago, I had a dream where I died,
Hmm.
and or I was being attacked actually, and then it like cut out in the middle of this process, and I was suddenly in like the next scene, like a TV show, right? And so I just thought, oh, and I was conscious of what was happening in the dream, and so I just thought, well, that was weird. I must not have died. We'll just move on with this. And
Uh-huh.
so friends come to visit me, and they have come to tell me, in fact, that I have died and it's time to cross over, right? So
Oh
now
my
I'm on the
gosh.
opposite side of this experience that I've had many,
Uh-huh.
many times in my waking life, or in
Uh-huh.
journeys and this type of thing. And first of all, I thought, it really is, part of me thinks, it really is like I think, right? It wasn't, I didn't even go all the way through the process. It was, I'm about to die and then I'm dead. And I didn't even know it, right? And so and when many of these spirits I encounter, that's what happened. They don't know.
Uh-huh.
They didn't
Yeah.
realize that that's what,
Yeah.
okay. And then someone comes and tells them. So part of me after that dream was like, well, that was cool. I got to actually experience the other side of this. I see. It just proved to me that my experience is correct, right?
Mhm.
That's correct. But the very next place my brain goes is, what if it's just reflecting my belief that it's correct back to me, right? What if this is just one version of what happens when we die, or need assistance crossing over? What if there's lots of other ways to cross over or die or move on to whatever is next, and keep your, in this case, very clearly, like the consciousness kept going without the body very easily. And so that's where I start going, in my mind is, well, how much of this is really true, and how much of it is true because it's just the experience I've had, and it just continues. My beliefs are continuing to build this bubble around me of all of the things I believe are true. And so what else out there might be true? Which normally, if I start asking those questions, I start getting those answers. And they start coming to me.
So, and then my question, because when I used to work with people, like I was very aware, and I've done past life stuff, but even in working with people, in here working in this life, I'm very aware that when I'm doing that work, for me, like I don't enter into it with a belief system. I enter into it with like, what belief system are they bringing to the table that we need to shift and change to allow them to become more empowered? Because I will wander freely in the place of no belief and have my own panic attacks and be fine with that, because it's just part of who I am. But I don't want to lead somebody else there. So when I'm operating in somebody else's beliefs, and we're working through their beliefs, there's always a landing place where there's something that's more empowering. Now, I try not to talk about it in terms of this is your new belief. It's like, well, this is a new way to move forward, to investigate and explore. So like for you, when you're working with these earthbound entities, I mean, you're really working within their understanding of what happened.
Yes.
And you're assisting them through what their perspective is. But that doesn't mean it has to be your perspective or truth or anything else. It's simply, this is what they're bringing to the table. And in order to assist them, you need to meet them where they are and hold their hand in the moment and carry and help to walk them forward, instead of bringing your own belief system. Like, you're not bringing a belief system and imposing it upon them. You're actually showing up to what they believe, and you're reaching people who have a similar understanding of that paradigm, and able to assist them through it. But there's cultures that don't do the tube of light. There's because that was always my thing, and I hit somebody in a past life regression thing, and they're like, "What light?" I'm like, "Oh, what do you think?"
What do you
look around and tell me what's going on?
And I think this is how I got to this questioning in this place as well, is that as I have interacted with people of other religions, and I realize, well, this is what they were told to believe. And what's proven to me is that what you believe is going to happen when you die is what happens. And so if I believe I'm going to get on a rocket and shoot off into the cosmos, I think that's possible.
Which actually makes it, I mean, it sort of speaks to that idea that, whatever it is meets you where you are with your beliefs, but it doesn't make any of the beliefs in and of themselves true. It makes them ideas that you can move through as you transition through different things, whether you're transitioning through, marriage to divorce, or, life to death, or any kind of transition that we make as humans, because we always have to let go of something and open to something else. And we've got these passageways through there. But beliefs, I think, bring a lens to the experience. And the universe, being just the ultimate lover, shows up as the lens that you need in the moment. But if you begin to remove your own lens, like, you got to show up with people where they are with their lens and work with them that way. You can't say, this is my belief, let's work on, and let's bring you into my belief, because that's ineffective.
Absolutely.
But if you come to something without a lens, and you can recognize what their lens is, especially if it's different than yours, it can help to facilitate the experience. But I've been trying to work in my life, like, I think everybody's life is their own experiment. And so one of my big experiments is, how do I live without a lens, and still cope?
Right.
And I have lots of
and then right. And then go to the grocery store and get your groceries, and
and it's not
function in the world.
I find them all the time, so I know that they're there. But then I kind of dismantle them. I let them go, and I say, well, what else is possible here? What else? might there be? And all this information comes in. But I really have tried, especially in the last 5 or 6 years, to receive the information to allow it to flow like a river. It's a river that's flowing. I'm flowing on the river. We're all hanging out, having a good time. But none of this stuff is real, but it's
Right.
helpful. And everybody's experience of that is different. And so if I hold too tightly to my experience, I can't meet somebody else where they're at, especially because
Yeah, absolutely.
I enjoy ranging way off the grid when it comes to, thought.
Right,
So I can't
right, right.
expect anybody else to show up where I'm at. I mean, you will because, you're you. And I have conversations with people who do for the most part, but in general life, like I gotta let go of my lenses and not think that they're actually true so that I can be with people where they are in that moment so we can share something that I don't require them to show up the way that I need them to show up just to validate my own experience. I think that actually took a long time to learn because we're taught so much that we need to seek out people and experiences and ideas and things that validate what we believe in order to be safe in the world. And I don't think that's actually true. I think that's another belief.
Well, you're so right. I mean, if you just even think about how we gather, with our friends or our family that
Hmm.
have like belief systems, or even on social media today, right? You just end up in the groups and places with other people who believe the things that you do because
Yeah.
it's reaffirming your own beliefs for yourself. And it's interesting, and it's such a to me, it's right just where my brain goes to because it's such a great example of this idea, because I think beliefs around death are things that we hold very closely to us, depending on, well, some people more than others, but many people very much, subscribe to a group idea within their religion or whatnot that
Hmm.
that this is what happens. And so, a great example was when I was working with ancestors of mine who wanted some assistance. Their religion, I learned, taught them that after you die, you wait with your body for
Hmm.
Jesus to come back for you.
Oh,
Okay, so
wow.
that's
Okay.
now I didn't know that. I had learned that after the fact, but I went to visit the cemetery, which was specific to this religion, and was like, oh my gosh, there's so many spirits here, way more than I would
Oh,
expect.
wow.
And
Uh-huh.
so I realized, again, it's all being reinforced, right? This
Hmm.
is what you believed before you died, and then you die and you're waiting there with your body with all of these other people who
Hmm.
are doing the same thing, right? Everyone's doing exactly what they believe, and here's the universe, or not anybody coming along and saying you're doing it wrong.
Right.
Like it's honoring your belief about what is true. And so what's funny is when I, go to interact with my ancestors in particular, and have a conversation with them, I have specific guides that I work with for this type of work. And I realized they don't know who that is. That's not part of their religion.
Hmm.
And so in this case, I have to say, if the energy of Jesus comes forward, that's someone they're familiar with, and
Yeah.
can communicate with. But you're right, it doesn't. I couldn't come to them with my
Hmm.
beliefs. It
Yeah.
made no sense to them. The crazy lady with just showed out of nowhere, and is trying. There was no way to convince them otherwise. Not that I was particularly trying. So it's a good, kind of translation into, so then what does that mean for all of us who are currently embodied, and what our beliefs are, and what we either are imposing on other people or are specifically seeking out and gathering with people who are reinforcing those beliefs, rather than, as you're saying, kind of, what if I didn't have that belief at all? What
Yeah.
exactly happened to me?
Well, we can see, and actually, the internet has been really magnifying of this. It's been an accelerant of all kinds of different things. But one of the things it has done is that it has really begun to organize people who experience their beliefs as fact because they surround themselves with other people who are reflecting back to them in their feedback loop that what they believe is true.
Right.
And so it's divided us in all kinds of interesting ways. And when you believe that your beliefs are true, particularly in when it's, there's other things that might point out that maybe you should think that they'd be open to some other kinds of truth. And regardless of what you think the truth is, because it's that whole belief that beliefs are true that really stands in the way, because we change our beliefs all the time. I mean, we'll
Yeah.
change our mind, and we've got our personal concept of who we are, and it's all of our beliefs, and it's our thoughts, and it's our opinions, and things like that. And then we change our mind about something, and like we're still, but we're still the same person, but now we've got this new belief or this new idea or this new other thing, and we kind of gloss over the fact that what we truly believed was true at that moment in time wasn't actually true. But now I believe this other belief is really true. And now that's true. And I'm holding on to that because the whole construction of that our identity is real and our sense of self is real, even as all of the ideas and the beliefs we have within it shift and change on a regular basis. But if we really looked at the brain technology that believes its beliefs are true and real, it's kind of how, we all believe that we're right. It's brain technology. It keeps you from standing there wondering why the saber-toothed tiger is running to you, and should you run,
Right.
or should you stand there? Should you climb a tree? Should you look into, all that kind of stuff. It's a technology embedded in our biotechnology system, and that's just how it works. And so when you look at like, oh, okay, so if I understand that my brain technology is always reflecting to me that I am right and everything that I believe is right, and that then when I find something else, sometimes it's really traumatic to find that something you believe, like if you're betrayed by a person that you love that you believed in, and you're betrayed, sometimes there's a lot of pain, and then you're right about them being a horrible person, but you're still right.
Right.
And it's a characteristic of the brain, it's a characteristic of identity. But if you look at it critically, you realize that none of those things are actually real. They are the projection of a brain that believes that everything inside of it that's operating is real and true. And when you begin to look at yourself as a piece of technology, it's just me going down the rabbit hole again, of biotechnology, and you look at how those things operate, you see kind of the facade of identity and the facade of reality, that if we begin to look at it critically and depersonalize it a little bit, which is why I like the simulated reality thing, you realize that that's just how the brain works. It's just how the body
Right.
works. It's designed
Right.
to help keep you from like having like being mired in indecision all of the time. But
Well, it's
just
such a
one,
good point.
go ahead.
Yeah, just because nobody's going to wake up day after day after day and say to themselves, I'm totally wrong, but I'm going to keep doing it
No.
anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like we're doing whatever we think is true and right.
Yeah. But we do it, and then we change our mind and we do that, and we think that's right. So where
Right.
in there is the consistency? And the consistency is that the technology of the brain and the technology of this projected system is to always, consider that it's right. The brain is amoral. There's nothing, it's a machine. It's like a machine. It
It's
learns what it
neutral.
learns. It's
Yeah.
neutral. It believes what it learns is true until proven otherwise, which you can learn how to do for yourself. But that's just the way it works. And so if we
Yeah.
took a step back and we said, oh, okay, that's how it works. Where am I in that? Like, how do I, if I step back from the technology and I look for a deeper experience of who I am, like I look to the subtle, or I look to just a larger experience that can see the observer, right? That can see this is just how this organ works. And just because the
Yeah.
organ works that way doesn't mean that that's all true and that I need to show up to that as truth. If I can live lightly with that and just, kind of let go of beliefs and allow myself to show up to things in the moment and know that there'll always be a construction in the moment, because people bring their own constructions, like they bring their own food to a party. You don't have to provide food. Everybody
Right.
brings their own food. They bring their own ideas, they bring their own constructions. Then you can just let them like
Right.
live it out, and you just like, you respond, as opposed to, the meeting of the belief systems or the clashing of the belief systems.
Well, and that's part of why I think we've kind of entered into this space of extreme duality, right?
Hmm.
That it didn't feel so extreme or so hard to reconcile within ourselves, and in the past. And so it was kind of easier to let it just be,
Mm-hmm.
and and let there to be a left and a right, or a right, wrong, and whatever. And so we've got this kind of extreme polarity showing up, so that we have to
Mm-hmm.
reckon with it, and maybe say neither is right or neither is
Mm-hmm.
wrong. But what I've seen so clearly in the past year is that whatever, as you say, whatever you believe is true at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
there is plenty of evidence to show
Mm-hmm.
you that you're true. And
Yes.
so, whoever's shouting on the internet about, listen to these people because they know what they're talking about. There's a
Mm-hmm.
whole other group that's saying, but we also have credible information,
Mm-hmm.
and,
Yes.
pick your subject. And
Yes.
whatever it is that you believe, it gets really difficult to look at somebody and say you are completely wrong, because you
Right.
have to look at their actual beliefs and say, I see why you believe that. I see that you
Mm-hmm.
have all of the evidence you need to hold that belief.
Yes.
So why can't I just let you have that belief? And so
Right.
I think that's why it's helping us, even though it feels extreme right now. I think at some point we're going to have to reconcile that and say that, this is my belief today, and maybe mine's going to change tomorrow, but also all of these other people have their beliefs, and they're valid and true for them because of
Right.
whatever they have gone through, whatever experiences, whatever research, whatever that they have had. It's no less true than your truth is for you.
Right. But there's another brain technology at play. Like if you think about it in terms of technology. So one of
Yeah.
the other technologies of the brain is unconscious bias. Like we talk about it in terms of
Oh,
racism,
sure.
but we also
Hmm.
talk about it, where there's learned bias, which is of course always looking at your own beliefs as true. But then
Right.
there's the unconscious bias, and this is a brain function that your brain is always looking to validate what you believe so that you can operate in the world without like being a bubbling pile of goo. And so it's another one of those ways that our body and brain work that are not personal to us, that we personalize to validate our own experience of identity and
And
our
what you realize
own.
is that this internet has been
Uh-huh.
created to allow us to live in that place, to
Yeah, and
continue doing that, playing it that way.
well, and hopefully to be able to begin to see how technology can work in a way that kind of creates its own universe. And because that's kind of like, the brain
Mm,
technology kind of creates its own universe. And the internet has kind of created its own sphere that you can participate in or not participate in. But when you get deeply, moving into the flows of it is its own world that can take over your life. And when you believe that things in the internet, which is like one more step removed from, reality,
another human, yeah.
are true simply because it's on the internet. It's just kind of like I'm hoping truly that it can begin to show us and mirror back to us the impersonality of technology and yet how personal it can feel.
Yeah.
That we take this piece of technology, the internet, which doesn't feel, it doesn't know, it's like a brain, right? It just takes in what you put in there and it spits back out to you what you want to see. It's a Facebook algorithm, right? You put it in,
Yeah.
you get it out, you do your search terms, and all this, you get the reflected universe that you are looking for. But if you begin to like take a step back and see how that works and can see, can look at yourself a little less personally and take your own ideas a little less personally and see it in a like, is that how this works? How can I work differently? Because like if you want to change your mind about something, or if you want to destroy a belief about something, you begin to look for evidence of something else that
Yes.
contradicts that, and you'll find it because
And
there's
you will
plenty of
find it every
evidence for
time.
that too.
So
Yes,
you can
yes.
dismantle your own beliefs by looking at other evidence, and then you can like neutralize them. So I do that to neutralize. Like I don't do it till I shift a belief from one to the other. I'm like, okay, this is like making me crazy. I need to dismantle this belief. So I'll look for all the stuff that makes it untrue, and then I'll have like a whole buffet of possibilities. And I'm like, oh, okay, so all can be true for whoever believes them, but none are inherently true because there's always going to be something else. And that's one way I've kind of played with my own brain technology to dismantle these really, I mean, they're not insidious programs, but they are they do what they do, and
Right, right. And
they're they're
they're constantly running
and they're
if you're not
constantly
questioning them.
running. Yeah. So anyway, I've been doing this for years and years. So if I'm completely off the reservation, people who are listening, that's okay.
I love these conversations.
Me too. All right, we've been in this
Because
one
they
for a
do that
while
for
now.
me too. They do that
I,
for me too. Is having these conversations, it does exactly that. It makes me say, "Well, I hadn't thought about that before.
yeah.
That's interesting," and then that leads me, to another chain of thinking. So, I mean, honestly, in what I do and the work that I've done, I mean, I've had to change my mind about things
Mm-hmm.
a million times, right? Or expand my reality is usually what it is. It's like, I hadn't considered that before, but
Yeah.
now that I have had this experience, or I've had, this information I didn't have before, then wow, I might have to change my mind about that. And
Yeah.
so I think that's part of the fun
I
of
think
our
so too.
experience here.
I do too. All right, we've been going on for a while. Thank you for letting me, process this stuff out. I've been writing about it, but I haven't had anybody to talk it out with. So thank you very much. So we've been talking with Amy Dempster. Amy, why don't you tell people how to reach you, and we will wrap up for right now.
Yes, you can find me. My website is Following Hawks, like the bird. And so I am at followinghawks.com. I'm on Instagram at Following Hawks. And my podcast is the Earth Keepers podcast, which you can also find on my website or on Podcast Player.
Excellent. And you can find all those links on conversationsfromtheedge.net, as well as all of the podcasts and various other things on there. All right. Wonderful talking with you today, Amy. And I will looking forward to our next conversation.
Yes. Thanks so much for having me, Kristine.
This is your host, Kristine Madera. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation from the edge of consciousness. You can find all our conversations at conversationsfromtheedge.net. You'll also find links to schedule a private conversation with me or any of my friends, as well as tools to help you expand your own consciousness and explore what's possible for you outside the boundaries of your current perceptions. Feel free to use this podcast to start your own conversation by sharing it with friends, on social media, in your blog, or even in your own podcast. And as always, live the adventure of pushing your own edge. It's the most amazing adventure there is.